Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you are watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies. And today I want to tell you about 10 really great, lesser known movies you can watch on the free movie app Tubi. So for those of you that don't know, Tubi is a free app that's available on most smart TVs, mobile devices, obviously computer. Wherever you stream movies, odds are you can get the Tubi app. There are ads in the movies and shows that they have, but they're fairly minimal. It's short ad runs that don't happen very frequently, which is why I think it's one of the better free services. And even though this video is in no way sponsored by Tubi, it is sponsored by Nirvana CBD, and I'll tell you more about their great stuff later in the video. But let's go ahead and start with my number 10 pick, which is a really great little hidden gem from 2008 called Surveillance. Now this stars Julia Ormond and Bill Pullman as agents that are doing an interrogation, and this movie does not go where you think it's gonna go. You do have to be very patient for the payoff with this one, but I thought the payoff was well worth the wait. And along the way, you do get some good performances from those actors and some other familiar faces. And this is kind of a gritty crime drama. They're investigating something that has just occurred. So you're getting sort of two things happening at once as you're seeing what happened and how the interrogation is going. Along the way, I felt like this was pretty mediocre. I was a little lukewarm on it, didn't really care too much about it, but it has been a long time since I've seen Surveillance, and I still remember it really well because the payoff was so unique. My number 9 pick is a time travel movie called Time Lapse. Now what's interesting about this one is some young folks, I want to say around college age, find this giant machine in a neighbor's apartment, and instead of an actual time machine that takes you to another time, it is able to take photos of things in the future. And these kids figure out how to leverage that to make money, and then weird things start happening as you get your inevitable double crosses and things not really working out as well as everyone planned. The thing that I thought was so interesting about this one is it's not a time machine, but just the simple concept of being able to take like a Polaroid of something in the future. There's so much that could be done with that, and I found that to be a really interesting element in this movie. Now, for those of you that have been longtime subscribers, you'll know typically I have at least one movie on a list like this that is not for everybody, and the pick on this list is Dogtooth. Now, this is actually an earlier film from the same director who did The Lobster and The Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Favorite. Dogtooth is one of his earlier films, and it's easily his weirdest. This is about not just a family, but really a group of young kids who are really sort of kept in this one house. Big piece of property, nice big house, but they're sort of forced to stay there for bizarre reasons. This is one that's not really going to make a ton of sense when the credits roll, but that's also what's unique about it, is it somehow still manages to work. There's some really dark, grim elements in this one, and also just kind of hilariously odd elements as well. Again, not for everybody, but if you like this director's other films, this is a great one to check out. If you haven't liked any of those movies, I can't imagine why you would like Dogtooth. Now, my number 7 pick is a Matthew McConaughey flick that I feel like people just didn't go see, and it's surprisingly good. It's called Gold. In this movie, Matthew McConaughey plays a prospector who goes in search of like lost gold in a jungle in Indonesia. Again, true story. And ultimately, I felt like the storytelling here was a little bit sloppy as it just sort of jumps around, but that's a minor critique of this movie. I think that's what prevents it from being really, really fantastic. But if you can sort of overlook a little bit of inconsistencies in the pacing and things like that, again, minor stuff, this is a really fun movie. Matthew McConaughey has a really great role. He's not only bald and really overweight, he's just got an interesting character that's not too over the top. And then some really wild over-the-top stuff happens that apparently is true. And you get this twisted story of greed and corruption that sort of like blossoms out of this treasure hunting type movie. So if that sounds interesting to you and you overlooked Gold, it's well worth going back and checking out. And obviously, certainly being on this list, it's well worth sitting through a few commercials for. My number 6 pick is one of the sadder picks on this list, but it's a very, very good film. But Blue Valentine stars Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams as a couple that falls in love and gets married. Now, what this movie is ultimately about is their entire relationship, from just falling in love and having sort of that young puppy love, to getting married, to having kids, to sort of the disillusionment of their marriage and sort of it dissolving and them trying to sort of keep it back together. Now, if that sounds like watching paint dry, this may not be the movie for you, but it is a performance piece. They both give very strong performances. It's a lot of them just sort of talking and arguing, so it is fairly heavy. But for that type of a movie, I find they're often sort of just like, kind of drudgery. This one's so well directed that it's a very interesting watch and it's very engaging. So again, while it's not a happy pick, it is a very, very good film with some very, very good performances in it. And on the tail of talking about a depressing movie, it's a good time to mention that during this whole COVID lockdown, it's been very difficult to prevent yourself from feeling blue. There's a lot of different things to do. I've been watching a lot of comedies. I've been making sure I'm getting some sunshine and some fresh air, things like that. But in addition, I've also been taking CBD supplements. And for the longest time, I've been taking supplements from Nirvana CBD, which is today's sponsor. Now, Nirvana CBD has a wide range of products. They've got other supplements that are mixed with CBD, like melatonin and turmeric. They've also got topical stuff, oils, lotions. They've even got one for muscle relief that feels like icy hot. I've been digging that one lately because I've been doing some more exercising. But also just their gummies and their tinctures that go underneath your tongue are great supplements for CBD that have a variety of benefits for me. One is they just make me feel better in general, not in a drugged way. I just feel like I'm in a better mood day to day when I take them regularly. I've also had really bad joint pain in my knees for the longest time. I ran hurdles in high school and I think I destroyed my knees. But I've recently started running again because it's been so long since I've had joint pain or discomfort in my knees. So check out the link in the description, see what kind of deals and offers they have going on right now. But if you're a CBD consumer, I highly recommend trying these products out. But if you're interested in CBD and you have not tried it yet, Nirvana is a great place to start, not only because I recommend it, but because they have sample sizes in most of their products as well. So you can try a little bit, see how you feel, and then buy more if you do indeed like their products. But let's go ahead and move on with the rest of this list. Now, my number 5 pick is a documentary, but this is a documentary for movie lovers. If you consider yourself to be any kind of a movie buff, this is one to watch. Not because it's about movies so much, but it's about people that love movies. This is actually about a group of young boys, a rather large group of young boys that are all brothers, that are Hare Krishna, that were raised in a tiny apartment in New York. And when I say raised in a tiny apartment in New York, I mean not allowed to leave this tiny apartment in New York. So this one also has some very sad elements. It ultimately has a positive outlook to it, and it's very much about how these young boys used movies to sort of experience the outside world, which I know seems odd because movies aren't real, but it shows how they sort of were able to cope with a lot of things through movies, and I found that to just be really, really fascinating. If nothing about that sounds interesting to you, there's not enough here in this documentary, I think, to interest you, but like I said, movie buffs, real true blue movie lovers, I think will find a lot to love in the Wolfpack. Another one that's not for the kids is the Iceman. In this movie, Michael Shannon plays a famous hitman, and then this is a chronicling of all of his hits. And the thing about this movie that makes it so interesting is it balances between his life as a hitman and his family life, which is very bizarre, and it plays out really well on screen. Chris Evans actually has a very small role here, but a very interesting role. It's the most interesting thing I've ever seen him in, as well as some other really great characters. Mob movie fans, if you love The Sopranos, Goodfellas, any of that, this is a fantastic one to watch. It's different from those things because it's not really about sort of the mob people. It's about this sort of peripheral character who was a hitman for the mob and all the things that he had to go through, not only to pull his hits off, but to just sort of keep his family together and keep the facade of being a regular person up. Michael Shannon kills it literally in this movie. Again, if you love those types of movies, those mobster movies, this is a must watch. Another mob movie that is not really known to be a mob movie that I have loved for years, and it's a super underrated Bruce Willis flick, that's Last Man Standing. Now, if you've never heard of this movie, this is a Western. Bruce Willis rolls into this dusty old town and starts to sort of take over. Meanwhile, there's these two organized crime factions that are sort of duking it out in this town, battling for power. He gets in between. Christopher Walken plays this crazy character, like he usually does, but a little crazier than usual, so that's pretty great too. A lot of great shootouts in this one, and when I say great, I don't mean really well cut together, really smart John Wick level shootouts. I mean just dumping bullets, firing off way more bullets than you can fit into a gun. It's that type of movie. If you love movies like Desperado that are just kind of over the top, that just have a lot of bullets flying but have kind of a cool vibe to them, Last Man Standing is in that category. And then my number one pick is also a Western. I did not mean for that to happen. It just sort of panned out that way. But it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite Western to have come out this century. It's called The Proposition. Now this one actually takes place in the Australian outback, and if you know anything about Australian history, it's very, very similar to American history in a lot of ways. You see that on full display in this movie. This movie has some incredible performances from people like Guy Pearce, Ray Winstone, and Emily Watson. And it's directed by John Hillcoat, who went on to do some other fantastic movies like The Road and Lawless. But I still consider The Proposition to be his best work by far. It's got beautiful cinematography, an amazing score put together by Nick Cave, who's one of my favorite musicians. I just love everything about this movie, the look, the story, the grittiness. It's just really fantastic. It does have some very, very heavy, some very, very dark elements in it, but if you love Darren Van Dam picks, you like this channel, you like the types of recommendations I make, The Proposition is a top tier recommendation right now. And you can find it on some other services like Prime Video. If you have access to that, you don't have to watch the commercials. But if you don't, Tubi, I'm telling you, is a great way to watch stuff with minimal interruptions. I love it. Let's take a minute to thank the Patreon supporters for supporting yet another video. And I'd also like to take a moment to thank anyone that leaves comments on this channel. The comments section in YouTube is notoriously negative, yet I've got overwhelmingly positive comments on this channel, and I thank each and every one of you for doing that. If you're interested in supporting the channel, you can check out the Patreon link in the description below, or you can become a channel member. There's a link to that down there as well. With that, you can get access to some exclusive content. However you choose to support the channel is greatly appreciated, even if it's just leaving a comment. But I will keep making videos like this one as long as you keep watching them. Thanks for checking out this Tubi episode, and you will see me on the next one.